G20 Leaders Summit Declaration పై Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman మాట్లాడుతున్నారు. లైవ్ చూద్దాం.
And also inclusive cities of tomorrow. The G20 principles which are issued for financing cities of tomorrow to promote effective and efficient use of financial resources to support urban development that is socially inclusive, environmentally responsible and economically sustainable are now all under the framework of the principles which have been used. The MDBs and the development financial institutions can use these principles in their financing plans for urban infrastructure. The sixth, which I'd like to quickly draw your attention, is the two-pillar solution on global taxation, the international taxation. We've made substantial progress in the two-pillar solution, and the work has also happened on the exchange of information on immovable property transactions between countries. There is a launch of the pilot program of the South Asia Academy in India for tax and financial crime investigation in collaboration with the OECD. The seventh, on which I'll elaborate, is mechanism to support the timely and adequate mobilization of resources for climate finance. Till date, the conversation was focused on calling on developed countries to say, where is that $100 billion US dollars, which didn't come. But Indian presidency adopted an action-oriented approach, and the G20 explored mechanisms that can support timely and adequate mobilization of resources for climate finance, facilitating access to multilateral climate funds and enhancing their leverage and ability to mobilize private capital has also been our focus. Special focus again on development, demonstration, deployment of green and low carbon technologies. Now the list of outcomes, I've pointed out 7, just 3 more which I'll not go into the detail, but you can take it as enough has been done on that. I'll also put it out for your consideration. Scaling up sustainable finance for social sectors, health and education. Technical assistance for capacity building. Then global conversation on transition policies, especially to include range of options, both on pricing and non-pricing. And the third one, enhancing finance health collaboration so as to cover many other work streams as well. So I listed out 7, elaborated on them, 3 others which have not elaborated, but on all of them, substantial progress and outcomes have been achieved. India's received tremendous support from the G20 members across the table. The outcomes of the Indian presidency are a testimony to India's commitment to multilateralism and for international cooperation. We assure the upcoming Brazilian presidency of our strong support and to continue the momentum on key issues of global importance. I now hand over back to Minister Jaishankar.
Thank you, Nirmala ji. May I now request G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant to bring out the major outcomes from the Sherpa track.
Thank you, Minister. So first of all, when we started India's presidency, the Prime Minister had said that India's presidency must be inclusive, it must be decisive, it must be ambitious, and it must be action-oriented. The New Delhi Leaders' Declaration has 83 paras in all. All 83 paras have 100% consensus across all countries. There are 8 paras on the geopolitical issue which is entitled Planet, People, Peace and Prosperity. All those 8 paras have 100% acceptance. All countries have unanimously supported the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration. This is one declaration without a single footnote and without any chair's summary. This is a complete statement with 100% unanimity. This demonstrates both the Prime Minister's and India's great ability to bring all developing countries, all emerging markets, all developed countries, China, Russia, everybody together on the same table and bring consensus. Secondly, this has been the most ambitious presidency in G20's history ever, because the number of outcomes it has, both the outcomes and the annexed documents are about 112, which is more than 2.5 times which has ever been achieved before. Thirdly, this presidency, if you go through the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration, it has a huge India narrative, it has a huge India footprint, whether you look at the Deccan high-level principles on food security, whether you look at the Chennai high-level principles for blue ocean economy, whether you look at the Goa roadmap for tourism, whether you look at the Gandhinagar implementation roadmap for land restoration or Jaipur call for enhanced MSMEs, all this will leave a huge footprint of India in G20. So one of the key achievements to my mind, one is that we've achieved a very major green development pact in today's world of climate action and climate finance. Every single country has come together to focus on green development pact, which has financing, which has focused on global greenhouse gas emission by 43% by 2030, which has a doubling provision of adaptive finance by 2025, which has a global biofuel alliance, which has completely new principles of life for sustainable development, which has ending plastic pollution, which has reducing disaster risk, and a whole lot of other components put together as the Green Development Pact of the leaders of G20 countries for a greener world of tomorrow. Secondly, there is a huge focus on accelerating progress on sustainable development goals because the COVID had hit a vast segment of our population. There's a G20 action plan to accelerate progress on SDGs. There is a huge focus on education, health, nutrition. There's a huge focus on creative industries like culture as a transformation for SDGs. And there is a huge focus on inclusive and resilient growth in this entire things, most of which the finance minister has spoken about, so I'm not talking. But I think one of the biggest achievements of this New Delhi Leaders' Declaration is what we've achieved on women-led development with a massive focus on women empowerment and gender equality. And this focuses on reducing labor force participation gap, bridging the gender digital divide. There's a huge focus on gender inclusive climate action. There's a completely big focus on women's food security, nutrition and well-being. And we've created a new working group on empowerment of women, which Brazil will carry forward. There's the next key big focus has been on technological transformation and the digital public infrastructure. Before we started our presidency, there was a vacuum on the digital world. There was no definition of digital public infrastructure. There was no framework. Both the definition and the framework has been accepted by G20, and for the first time, there is a new financial architecture for digital public infrastructure. There's also a global digital public infrastructure repository. There's a huge new focus. For the first time in the world, the G20 leaders have focused on artificial intelligence. They have focused on cyber security. Also, I would say that one of the key aspects of this presidency has been its focus on developing and emerging markets. No document of G20 has had such an immense focus on developing and emerging markets, and the voice of the global south as this particular document has. This is a document of the global south. This is a document of the developing countries which came together and spelled out their priorities. And India has been the spokesperson of all the global south and spelled out their priorities in this document. This document also condemns terrorism. It denies terrorist groups safe haven and freedom of operation and many other things. But let me assure you that for the planet, there are several new initiatives on climate and health, and this has been an inclusive G20. This has been a very G20 where the leaders give a direction to global agendas, and this has laid the foundation for very bold action. But more than anything else, it has amplified the voice of global south. It has also demonstrated that India has a huge capacity of bringing the world together and leading the world in developmental and geopolitical issues as well. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Amitabh. Following up on my colleagues, let me add a few more remarks. While noting that the G20 is not the platform to resolve geopolitical and security issues, the leaders recognized that they can have significant consequences for the global economy. In particular, they dwelt on the ongoing war in Ukraine and the impact it has had, especially on developing and least developing nations still recovering from the pandemic and economic disruption. The 3 F's, food, fuel, and fertilizers, were issues of special concern. Another subject that was addressed by them, as the Sherpa noted, was countering terrorism and money laundering. The leaders condemned terrorism in all its forms and manifestations and recognized that it constitutes one of the more serious threats to international peace and security. So, in conclusion, as you can all see, all G20 member states have come to New Delhi with a strong sense of responsibility about addressing the most pressing global challenges. Speaking for India, we are clear that no one left behind, as the finance minister highlighted. No one left behind is as much a foreign policy goal as it is a domestic one. Indeed, it should be a global one. Obviously, there are differing viewpoints and interests at play in regard to the various issues under discussion. However, we have been able to find common ground on all of them. As a result, we can justifiably state that under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's guidance, the New Delhi summit has given clear directions for the growth and development of the global economy in the years ahead. We would be glad to respond to your queries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Before I open the floor for questions, let me just mention that the document in question, the New Delhi Declaration, has been uploaded on the website about an hour ago, and please have a look at it. Let me open now the floor.
భారత మండపంలో G20 సమావేశాలు కొనసాగుతున్నాయి. శిఖరాగ్ర సమావేశ వేదికపైన యుఎస్ ప్రెసిడెంట్ జో బైడెన్, బ్రెజిల్ అధ్యక్షుడు లూయిజ్ ఇనాసియా, దక్షిణాఫ్రికా అధ్యక్షుడు సిరిల్ రామఫోసా, ప్రపంచ బ్యాంక్ అధ్యక్షుడు అజయ్ బంగాల కరచాలనం చేసుకున్నారు. అంతకుముందు ప్రధాని నరేంద్ర మోదీ యూకే ప్రధాని రిషి సునాక్తో ద్వైపాక్షిక చర్చలు జరిపారు. ఇటు జపాన్ ప్రధాని పునియా కిషిదా, ఫ్రాన్స్ అధ్యక్షుడు మెక్రాన్తోనూ మోదీ ద్వైపాక్షిక సమావేశాలు జరిపారు. మధ్యాహ్నం 3 గంటల తర్వాత రెండో సెషన్ ప్రారంభమైంది. జీవన ఇంధనంపై ప్రపంచ కూటమిని ప్రారంభిస్తున్నట్లు మోదీ ప్రకటించారు. ఈ కూటమిలో ప్రపంచమంతా చేరాలని కోరారు. దీంతో పాటు G20 శాటిలైట్ మిషన్ ఫర్ ఎన్విరాన్మెంట్ అండ్ క్లైమేట్ అబ్జర్వేషన్ ని ప్రారంభించేందుకు ప్రధాని మోదీ ప్రతిపాదించారు. గ్రీన్ క్రెడిట్ ఇనిషియేటివ్ పై కలిసి పనిచేయాలని G20 దేశాల్ని మోదీ కోరారు. G20 లీడర్స్ సమ్మిట్ డిక్లరేషన్ పై ఏకాభిప్రాయం కుదిరిందని ప్రధాని నరేంద్ర మోదీ ప్రకటించారు.
और आप सभी के सहयोग से नई दिल्ली G20 लीडर्स समिट डिक्लेरेशन पर सहमति बनी है. मेरा प्रस्ताव है कि इस लीडर्स डिक्लेरेशन को भी एडप्ट किया जाए। मैं इस डिक्लेरेशन को एडप्ट करने की घोषणा करता हूं।
భారత మండపంలో G20 సమావేశాలు కొనసాగుతున్నాయి. శిఖరాగ్ర సమావేశ వేదికపైన యుఎస్ ప్రెసిడెంట్ జో బైడెన్, బ్రెజిల్ అధ్యక్షుడు లూయిజ్ ఇనాసియా, దక్షిణాఫ్రికా అధ్యక్షుడు సిరిల్ రామఫోసా, ప్రపంచ బ్యాంక్ అధ్యక్షుడు అజయ్ బంగాల కరచాలనం చేశారు. అంతకుముందు ప్రధాని నరేంద్ర మోదీ యూకే ప్రధాని రిషి సునాక్తో ద్వైపాక్షిక చర్చలు జరిపారు. ఇటు జపాన్ ప్రధాని పునియా కిషిదా, ఫ్రాన్స్ అధ్యక్షుడు మెక్రాన్తోనూ మోదీ ద్వైపాక్షిక సమావేశాలు జరిపారు. మధ్యాహ్నం 3 గంటల తర్వాత రెండో సెషన్ ప్రారంభమైంది. జీవన ఇంధనంపై ప్రపంచ కూటమిని ప్రారంభిస్తున్నట్లు మోదీ ప్రకటించారు. ఈ కూటమిలో ప్రపంచమంతా చేరాలని కోరారు. దీంతో పాటు G20 శాటిలైట్ మిషన్ ఫర్ ఎన్విరాన్మెంట్ అండ్ క్లైమేట్ అబ్జర్వేషన్ ని ప్రారంభించేందుకు ప్రధాని మోదీ ప్రతిపాదించారు. గ్రీన్ క్రెడిట్ ఇనిషియేటివ్ పై కలిసి పనిచేయాలని G20 దేశాలను మోదీ కోరారు. G20 లీడర్స్ సమ్మిట్ డిక్లరేషన్ పై ఏక అభిప్రాయం కుదిరిందని ప్రధాని నరేంద్ర మోదీ ప్రకటించారు.